Welcome back to Fyuz 2022 from Madrid, and joining us in our Mobile World Live event studio is Michael McGroarty from VMware. Michael, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So VMware here. Now, we haven't spoken with anybody else yet, kind of in your position as a vendor here. So I'm curious on what your take has been on what's been unfolding this week on the evolution of the benefits of Open RAN and where VMware fits into that conversation.
Sure. Well, I think from what we've seen so far, 2 days into Fyuz now, a lot of the announcements that we're seeing is really the operators committing more to Open RAN, the adoption of it being a lot wider. So maybe at the beginning, Open RAN was very much a new technology, something maybe that was, I'm not going to say an R&D experiment, but it was quite cutting edge. Whereas now I think we're seeing a lot more general adoption and kind of wide scale adoption across operators. So really we've moved beyond the initial, maybe just CapEx, OpEx, kind of focus on initial headline grabbing savings towards really what does it mean for the operators? How will it impact their operations? How will it bring new benefits like the ability to differentiate themselves from their competition, the ability to bring new intelligence, new services, to monetize the RAN. And I think that's the way the conversation is maybe maturing now, that it's talking a lot more about Open RAN is accepted as a RAN technology, to compete with the more traditional RANs, but above what does it bring? Like, what can it enable?
So what are those key technologies that come with Open RAN that you think are key to unlocking more of that innovation and differentiation conversation beyond the the monetary, the pure monetary offerings? Are we talking about things like RIC, for example? Yeah,
most definitely. So I think the RIC, near real time and non-real time, the two of them have very kind of important roles to play in those additional services and the monetization at the end of the day that an operator can get from the RAN. So if we look at the non-real-time RIC, we're maybe looking at things like traditional CSON type applications, but now brought onto the RIC, we have the ability to also bring in the legacy networks into that platform to be able to control both the new Open RAN network and the traditional network from a single platform. That's one use case. If I then switch to the real-time RIC or near real-time RIC, we've seen Cohere have kind of very interesting applications around increasing capacity, basically, for an operator's network. There's location use cases. There's all these use cases around gaming, around customer experience, that I think really will help operators not just to monetize the RAN, but to be able to differentiate them from their competitors, the other operators.
You speak about how the business case has perhaps matured from 6 years ago, obviously, when this journey started, the last 3 or 4 years or so. How about the standards, the platform itself? Have you seen a maturity there, and do you feel as though, particularly with talk of the real world implementations now, rather than just kind of test stuff, but we're actually deploying things in some sort of anger, do you feel optimistic that there's a lot more walking the walk rather than just talking the talk?
Most definitely. I think what we've seen is, like at the initial, as you say, it was maybe small scale. The need for the automation that when we talk about OpEx savings, a lot of times that's automation. And the need for that wasn't really there. In the lab, you could do a lot of manual processes just to get things up and running to prove performance and equivalence to traditional networks. Now, when we're seeing, you look at Dish deploying at scale, there's a need for day 2 operations, lifecycle management, zero touch provisioning, all of these, fundamental things that are really needed to be able to deploy Open RAN at scale. Yeah. And what we're seeing is they're there today. We're able to deliver at scale. And I think it really is, the maturation of the Open RAN products.
And then from a VMware point of view, great presence here at Fyuz this year. I know you've been present in various sessions as well as on the booth as well. What kind of conversations have you been having, and are you hoping to have more of this year?
I think the RIC has been really one of the central conversations we've been having. If I look at VMware over the last 2 to 3 years, around what we've been doing in labs, 2 years ago it was very much Open RAN, and for our part, the O Cloud in labs, whereas now it's moving towards RIC. So we're getting a lot of interest around going into operators' labs to deploy the RIC, to deploy new XApps and RApps for those use cases we talked about. And I think that's really the kind of the conversations we're having now, is people saying, we believe Open RAN is as good as traditional RAN, as a RAN technology, but show me how it can be better. Like, show me what that next step is. And for us, a lot of that is around the RIC.
And one final question, Michael. How do you see the conversation going with those networks who maybe aren't on board with this Open RAN journey and vision yet? Obviously, there are a number of operators who've been here from the very beginning or very shortly afterwards, but there are a big number who aren't. What kind of conversations do you think it will take to have them understand and maybe go on board with the journey?
Sure, I think there's some operators who maybe aren't on the leading edge, who are watching what's happening with Open RAN, who are seeing the likes of Vodafone, make big, bold steps about deploying in real world. I think what they want to see is maturity, stability, these networks being deployed, at scale, and as well to see that the operational departments and the actual framework within the operators can change to be able to manage, not just manage these networks, but to get the most from them. That, Open RAN will be a mindset change. It will be a process change around, it's a fully virtualized network running on COTS hardware, questions around lifecycle management, day two operations. Those are quite different than traditional networks. So I think what those operators want to see is that there is that path forward, that these operators, the processes, the mindsets can change, and as well that we have the maturity of the products there and the breadth of the ecosystem. So that will enable them to then adopt Open RAN.
I guess having those not contrary opinions, but having that healthy skepticism is a positive thing overall. Otherwise, events like this become an echo chamber, and having the challenges that creates innovation that ultimately works for more, I think.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That it may be, I commented earlier about the amount of operators are here at Fyuz. It may be previously or at other events where you just have vendors. It does seem like that echo chamber that we're all telling each other that Open RAN will succeed. Whereas I think now we're really starting to see that in brownfield networks, it can thrive as a diverse vendor ecosystem to challenge those traditional networks.
Michael, thank you so much for joining us here in the studio. Have a terrific rest of week here at Fyuz as well.
Thank you very much. Cheers.